What is going on, guys? Stefan, S&E's Garage. In today's video, we're going to be doing our exploratory surgery here on this 2011 Elantra Touring with the snapped timing belt. And we're going to see if we can see any obvious signs of piston to valve contact. Alright guys, so this Hyundai right here, the Elantra, and this 2-liter engine, this is probably one of the most reliable cars that, in my opinion, Hyundai has ever built. And if properly maintained, this engine right here will easily go 300,000–400,000 miles. I've seen it in the dealership myself. But unfortunately for this car, the original owner didn't replace the timing belt and it snapped. And we more than likely have some internal engine damage here because this is an interference engine. So in this video, we're going to go ahead, we're going to pull the ignition coil cover, and we're going to go ahead and pull the spark plugs, and we have our X-Tool D8 here set up with our bore scope, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to scope out these cylinders, and we're going to see if we can find any obvious indications of piston to valve contact. More than likely there is going to be. I just kind of want to get an idea of how bad it is. If I don't see anything obvious, what we're going to do is we're going to slap a timing belt on this, and then we're going to check compression. And if I'm down on 1 or 2 cylinders, I'll know that I have some slightly bent valves and the head's got to come off. So let's go ahead. We're going to get a 10mm on my impact gun. We're going to zip this coil cover off. We're going to pull the spark plug tubes or the spark plug wires out, and then rip out the spark plugs. Alright, so we are going to be doing a proper tune-up on this once we get it running, because these look like Hyundai ignition wires, so they may very well be original, or they were replaced at a dealership at some point. I do see a Hyundai remanufactured transmission under here, which is nice. So that means that this thing was probably dealer maintained to some extent, so I'm not sure why the timing belt got skimped, but again, I'm just going to go ahead and kind of barbarically rip these wires out. Okay. Yeah, they're a little crusty. When you pull these out, you're going to want to twist them to break the seal, sort of, and then pull them out, like so. Okay, and I don't see any oil down in the spark plug tubes, so that tells me that the spark plug tube seals are not bad, but it is going to need a valve cover gasket because it is leaking, and if I'm pulling the cylinder head, that's going to be coming off anyway, so that will get replaced. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and get a spark plug socket with an extension, pull the plugs out. All right, we're just going to use a ratchet here to crack these spark plugs loose. Once we crack them loose, we will zip them out. Oh, that one was already loose, but now we can zip them out with the gun. When we pull it out, we just want to take a look at the tip. If the tip of the plug is bent, this one's not, we have problems. But I do smell fuel. Yeah, this one is soaked in fuel, if you see it. So if it's soaked in fuel, that's a good sign. That tells me that all 4 of these valves are shut, because fuel vaporizes very quickly when it's exposed to air. So that could be a good thing. This one is dry. And this one is also dry. So now we're going to go ahead, let's get our bore scope ready, and let's start looking down those cylinders and see what we can see. All right, so you guys really aren't going to be able to see what I'm doing here on the screen. So if I see anything that is concerning, I'm going to go ahead and take you off of the tripod, and at that point we will get you to see what I'm looking at here, but like I said, we're just going to go down into the spark plug and see if we see any obvious impacts here on the piston. And this one, I do not see anything. There is actually a pretty good amount of carbon here on top of this piston, which is normal. So if there were some contact, wait a minute, no, that wouldn't be there. You know, we might actually have some contact on this one. Let me show you what I'm looking at here. Hang on. So I'm sorry for the reflection, but what you can see here, that is the piston. And there is that one shiny spot on the dome of the piston right there. And that right there is a telltale sign that something knocked the carbon off of that piston. And I'm willing to bet that one of the valves probably hit there. So that's not a good sign. But let's go ahead and check the other three. I'm just in number one right now, and we'll see what else we find. All right, so now that we saw that on number one, let's go ahead down into number two. Oh, that piston's up top. This piston's actually pretty clean, but I don't see any signs of obvious contact there. That piston's up at the top, so that means number three is going to be up at the top too. I could try to rotate the engine a little bit, but like I said, if there were contact, you'd see the shiny spot at the edge of the piston, and I'm not seeing that. So let's go ahead, look down number three. Again, this is going to be very similar in position. And then it looks like, let's look down number four. What I think I'm going to do is it doesn't matter now because there's no timing belt on the engine. So I'm going to spin it backwards a little bit and see if we can take a look at 2 and 3 a little bit better. But I like what I'm seeing on number 4 so far. I don't appear to have any contact marks on this one. So number 1 looks suspect so far. But like I said, let's rotate this engine backwards a hair and see if we can see the tops of 2 and 3 a little bit better. All right, we're down to number 2. Number 2 looks good. And let's look down into number 3. And we have contact on number 3. Yeah, that's contact. Oh, geez. All right, so 1 and 3 aren't looking too good. I'll show you what we're talking about here. Okay, again, I'm sorry for the reflection. Right now we're in number 3, looking at the top of the piston, and you can see that little shiny spot right there. That is from contact with the valve. So again, I saw some obvious signs on number 1, and I see that on number 3. So I'm willing to bet we have at least 2 valves bent on number 1 and 2 valves bent on number 3. So we're going to skip the timing belt. We're not going to worry about throwing one on there yet. We're going to work on ripping this cylinder head off. And they're actually pretty easy to pull. We're going to unbolt the exhaust manifold. You just kind of pull it back a little bit. And we're going to leave the intake manifold on. We're going to obviously take all the accessories off of it. We just have 2 support rods back there to unbolt, and we'll pull the intake off with the head attached to it and then separate them at that point. Alright guys, and that is going to conclude this video. Now that we have confirmed our suspicions that we do have piston to valve contact, in our next video we're going to go ahead and start tearing into this thing to get the cylinder head off. Now like I said, these heads come off pretty easily. We're probably going to leave the intake manifold on the head and remove it after we get it out. It's just easier that way instead of trying to, you know, sneak your arms back there. But we'll go ahead, we'll pull the intake air box out, get all this out of our way. We'll pull this exhaust heat shield out of the way, get the exhaust manifold off, pull our inner timing cover off, and at that point we'll be able to pull the valve cover and remove the head. So please like, share, and subscribe. I know this isn't really a new and exciting car. It's a 2011 Hyundai. But this is largely how I fund our channel here, is by buying and selling used cars like this. And unfortunately, you're not going to find a good deal on a running and driving used car to resell. You kind of have to buy them broken and fix them, and that's exactly what we're going to do here. I have a lot of faith that we'll be able to get this thing running, and running well. We'll be able to get it nice and cleaned up, and it will be ready for its new owner. So we'll see you on the next one.